I went out and I actually purchased this. So we reached out to our new friends over at Lead Brakes, and they sent us an entire disc brake conversion kit for the rear end that we spec'd out for our Buick. Well, didn't expect that to work. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Rustomod. It's been a little bit since I've posted a video, and the reason is because I am behind the scenes trying to get everything together for our next big build. So get excited for that. But before we get to that big build, we have some things to finish up on our Buick Skylark you see behind me here. And on the last episode, we have been trying to revive this project a little bit and make it a lot better than what we started with. So if you guys weren't familiar with this build, we have basically taken a $200 junkyard car and LS swapped it for as cheap as possible. And then we took some money from a part out vehicle that we used for the build and we put twin turbos on it. It was a bunch of fun to build this car, but now we're starting to upgrade some things that we cheaped out on to make the car even better. So in this episode, we're gonna upgrade some final things on the Buick to make it that much better and hopefully get it back on the road that much sooner. So let's get to it. All right, so in the last episode, you guys saw we got one of these B&M shifters off Holley's website, and it's super nice, and I really want to throw this thing in. I am working on trying to figure out the bracketry of what we need to do. They lay it out in the instructions, but one thing I did have to get, because we're running a bench seat in the Buick, and I really like to keep the bench seat in there, is we got this little spacer thing for the floor. So basically we can put this shifter on top here, and you can space it up kind of however high you want it to go, and you can set where you want the height to be of the shifter. So it'll work with the bench seat, it'll bring it up a little bit, and it should make it a lot easier to grab and maneuver and stuff. So we're going to be installing this, and then once we put that in, we can throw our shifter in and then figure out how all the bracketry and stuff work for the Buick. But first, we got to pull that old shifter out of there. So let's knock that out real quick, and then we can start putting in all the new stuff. So if you guys don't remember, this is the shifter that I had in there because we had such a tight budget on the last one. This was the cheapest shifter I could find. So I'm gonna rip this thing out real quick, and then we can try to figure out where that little mount is going to be for the new shifter and trying to get that really comfortable in a good spot so I can use it pretty well. The other thing we have to do is I wanna try to figure out how to mount these dashes. So I have the one there, and then I also have the little 3-inch one that comes in the Holley kit. I want to try to put those in here as well. So that's the next thing we're going to tackle.
All right, while I'm up here, since I got the shifter out, I'm gonna throw in the new brackets and everything. So I'm gonna throw these in real quick, and then we can lower it back down. Now it does suck that I cut out that hole and the carpet. I have to cut it even more to be able to mount this onto the actual transmission tunnel. And then maybe I can try to fill that hole up also.
So we got our shifter in here and it works pretty good. Happy with that. I threw some carpet that I had sitting on the shelf over there in here to kind of cover up the ugliness. So it's not the best, but it looks better. And we also mounted our screens up here for our Holley. So it's pretty cool. Like I said, this one actually uses GPS speedometer, so we can run that one. And when we get driving this thing, I'll show you guys how that works. And then this is the standard
Holley screen that comes with the Terminator kit. So I'm going to primarily use this one just for speed, and then this one I can run all my gauges and stuff. So got those mounted up there with the shifter. So now I want to try to tackle the next big thing that is a big issue on the Buick, which is going to be the brakes. So one thing that kind of sucks about project cars is once you upgrade something, you might as well upgrade something else, and that kind of snowballs. So when I wanted to upgrade the rear brakes on the Buick, I figured out that the rear end in it is a 10 bolt and it's a 7.5-inch ring gear, and obviously it's an open differential. I wanted to upgrade that to a bigger rear end that will be able to hold the power and be able to spin both rear wheels. It doesn't make any sense to put disc brakes on that rear end, so I went out and I actually purchased this, which is another 10 bolt, but this is an 8.5-inch ring gear, way beefier, way bigger, and it has a posi traction, which is a huge upgrade. Now, I reached out to some friends, particularly Granny Car Garage on YouTube. He helped me out a ton, which he has a similar year Buick Skylark that he has a Turbo LS in, and he gave me the guidance to try to upgrade to a rear end like this. So big shout out to you, go check him out. I'll link his channel down below or link it up here, and we're going to be building this rear end for the Buick to be able to hold some power. So if you didn't know, this is essentially just a Chevy Nova with a Buick front end on it. The front half is basically a second-gen Camaro. So all of the stuff from a second-gen Camaro you could put on the front, and the rear is a little different. It's actually basically a first-gen Camaro in the rear. So this rear end I got on Marketplace, and it is a pullout from a first-gen Camaro. So this has a way beefier rear end gear ring and pinion. Like I said, it's an 8.5-inch, and it also has a posi rear end. So that's gonna be awesome for when we're doing burnouts and drag racing or do whatever we have to do in the Buick. But as you can see, it has no brakes on there. So that is what we're going to be tackling today. So to handle our brake issue on our new rear end, I wanted to get some disc brakes on there so we can actually stop this thing. So we reached out to our new friends over at Lead Brakes, and they sent us an entire disc brake conversion kit for the rear end that we spec'd out for our Buick. And it's pretty sweet. So obviously they send you the rotors. This is their max stop package. So it has drilled and slotted rear rotors, which actually are, funny enough, a lot better than what we have on the front. They have all the bracketry, all the lines and the dust shields and everything, even with emergency brake cables to run for our rear disc brake setup. So I'm really excited to put this on there and then get the rear end in the Buick. But we're not going to stop there, because our front master cylinder with the brake booster is a little wonky as well. Whenever I did the exhaust, I couldn't really fit the downpipe for the turbo very well on the driver's side, and it actually ends up hitting the wheel at full lock. So to alleviate the space issues that I have under the hood of the Buick, I reached out to manualbrakes.com, and they sell a full kit to get rid of the brake booster so I can have a little bit more room under the hood. Now, I reached out to them, I told them what I was going to do, and they sent me out with this master cylinder, which should be valved to work well with the disc brake kit that we're putting in the rear and the disc brake kits that are already on the front of the Buick. So we're going to be putting this in as well. I'm pretty excited. I think this is going to work really nicely and make our brake pedal feel way better than what it is right now. Right now, it feels like we barely have any brake. So we're gonna go through the whole thing, try to get this brake setup all put together on our rear end. We'll put in our master cylinder in the Buick, and then I'll stick our rear end up in the Buick and see how it all bolts together and get that thing dialed in. So I'm excited. So let's go and put this Lead disc brake kit together and show you guys how easy it is to go from a standard drum brake to a new disc brake setup. So in the instructions, it says to pull out the axles, and then you can go ahead and put the dust shield on and all the other stuff that kind of goes over top of the axle tube here. I don't really need the dust shields on this car anyway. I want to be able to access the caliper as easily as possible. What I'm going to do is I'm going to unbolt the dust shield. This is actually the rest of the old drum brake that was on there. I'm going to unbolt this, and I'm just going to cut it off. So that way I can slide that over top of the axle itself and get that out of the way. Then I'll show you guys what we're going to do to actually put the bracketry on here without having to remove the axles. Alright, so the way this kit works is it's actually staggered. So if you can see on the other side, the caliper is facing the rear of the vehicle because
the shocks are staggered. So they want the caliper to be opposite of the shock. So on the passenger side, the caliper is going to face to the rear, and on the driver's side, the caliper is going to face to the front. So this is the bracket that they use for this kit. And if you can see, it's actually notched out here so it can fit behind the little flange where that dust shield bolts to. And then they also give you this plate that you're supposed to put on the front side of where this flange is for the dust shield. Now, I obviously can't get this on there with the axle in there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to notch it and then slide it up over top. And that way I can get this on and off without pulling the axle. All right, so now that I notched this, I can slip this over top here and that will pop over that and it goes as a backer plate to that. So now I can go ahead and put on our caliper bracket, and that's just going to bolt here, and they give you all the hardware to be able to bolt this on. So I'm going to throw this on real quick and show you guys what it looks like. This is how the caliper bracket bolts on there. So these are the fasteners, and then that's that backing plate for this. Looks pretty good. So you can see on the other side how that is actually the other way, and this one is going to be on the front. So now the only thing left to do is to bolt the caliper and the rotor on there. Now they do give you some shims. You can see right here, depending on the spacing you have on your axle, they give you a bunch of shims so you can space it out. Basically, you want the caliper to be centered up on the rotor. Now, I was lucky and this one didn't require any shims, so I'm going to double check it on that side, but I don't think I'm going to have to use the shims. So this pin here threads into the plate, and then that also retains the pads here. Pretty compact setup. I really like the way that this is. And then they also give you a flexible line so you can weld a little tab on there, which they provide, and you can mount that and run your hard line for the rest of your axle. So I'm gonna put that whole thing together on this side, show you guys how it goes together. It's very simple, very easy kit. I've put a few of these kind of kits together on different vehicles and stuff, and this one looks like it's the easiest one that I've put together so far. So that is what the entire axle looks like, all assembled with the disc brake kit. Pretty cool. So like I said, you don't have to go and cut up the kit like I did. I just wanted to show you guys a way to do it with the axles in there. Plus, I want to be able to get to this stuff while the car is on the ground, so it's just a lot easier to be able to access all this stuff without the dust shield in the way. So that's how I wanted to do it, but it is a very, very nice kit. Go check out Lead Brakes and you can try to find a kit for your vehicle. Now, one thing I wanted to say is they give you these soft lines for the brake hose, and they give you this little tab to be able to weld on top of the axle, tack it into place so that way you can run your hard lines. I'm gonna wait to do that until I get the axle in the car so I can make sure that the brake lines aren't gonna interfere with anything else. So now the next step is I have the Buick up here on the lift, and we are going to have to pull out this old tiny little 10-bolt axle and get this out of the way. So that's going to be the next challenge. So we're going to start tearing this thing apart, get it up in the air, and see how bad it is to be able to remove this axle. I got the car lifted up a little bit so I can get the wheels and tires off, and I'm gonna try to pull the axle out on the lift, drop the leaf springs down out of the way, and see if I can get it out of there. So I'm gonna start pulling all the wheels off, get the axle out of there, and get it cleaned up and ready to go for the new one. All right, well, I got everything unbolted and out of the way. Not too bad, had to cut some stuff. What I'm thinking is I'm gonna try to do it without pulling the leaf springs. I don't know if it'll work, but it seems like I have a big enough gap here to get the brake drum through there. Then I can twist it, put it in the back, and then lift the car up. I think it might come out. That'll save me a little bit more work. Well, didn't expect that to work, but I think we got it out. Well, we got the old one out, and this is the new one. So much bigger and beefier compared to the old one. So I'm really happy. We're gonna swap this out and upgrade it. I'm gonna wait and finish up the rear end while it's in the car. It's a little bit easier to work on. Since it was kind of a pain in the butt to pull that one out, I think I'm going to pull off the rotor and caliper to get it in there. That way I have enough room to clear the leaf spring. Then once we put it in there, I can put it all back together. So that's the plan. Wish me luck. I'm by myself and this thing is pretty heavy. So we finally got the axle in place. Man, a lot of wrestling. Thing's pretty heavy, but it's in there. Got the calipers put back on. I'm gonna have to get some new U-bolts because this axle is a lot bigger than the other one. But as you can see, it fits on there pretty good. So I was able to get one of them on, but the axle is just too big and it's actually stretching the U-bolt and I can't line it up. So going to get some new ones tomorrow. For now, at least we got it sitting in the place and we have disc brakes on the rear. Got good news and bad news. Good news is I got the new U-bolts so we can finish putting the rear end together. Bad news is I ended up breaking a brake line and I started looking at them and they are completely rusted and I probably should go ahead and just put all new brake lines on this car. So I don't think we're going to be able to put the master cylinder in until I do all the brake lines. So I have them on the shelf. I might as well just do them, but it's Thursday and I want to get this video out by Friday. So I'm going to finish putting the rear end together, get the car sitting back on its own weight, and then in the next episode, we'll go through and put all the brakes together. So let's button up this rear end and see how it is finally all bolted into the car. All right, guys, well, we got the entire rear end bolted back in the place. So all that's left to do is throw it back on the wheels and set it down under its own weight. All right, well, we got it back on the ground, sitting on its own wheels, which is really cool with the new rear end back under there. Something that is kind of interesting is I had to run a wheel spacer on the other axle because the wheel and tire were actually hitting where the shock was. And now that we swapped the new rear end with the disc brakes and everything, it clears perfectly fine and I don't have to run the wheel spacer. So I got plenty of room now. Really cool. Didn't expect that, but that's pretty neat that I don't have to do that anymore because these tires are a lot bigger than the original ones, and I think the hubcap and steel wheel look is so cool on this thing. But now that we got the Buick all tied up, that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe so you can stay tuned for all the updates on the Buick and the rest of the projects here on Rustomod. Make sure you stay tuned as well because we have some big builds coming up very soon and I'm getting really excited. So stay tuned for all those projects and we'll see you guys on the next one.